Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss any update from RAU'S IAS Study Circle. Join the only official Telegram channel of RAU'S IAS Study Circle to get the relevant materials and important updates. Hello and welcome to the Daily News Simplified. The what, why and how of the newspaper analysis from the Civil Service Examinations perspective. So today we are going to discuss the Hindu Daily edition dated 10th November 2022. The topics which are to be discussed have been displayed on your screen and a timestamping of the same has been provided in the description box below. So before starting today's session, let us look at the question for the weekly answer writing practice. The question is from the Constitution, Polity and Governance section. The question says, reservations for the economically weaker section will add a new dimension for the interpretation of poverty for different groups and categories. In the light of this statement, critically examine the Supreme Court judgment approving the constitutional validity of the Constitution 103rd Amendment Act 2019. This is a long question, so you have to answer this particular question within the word limit of 250. So, if you want to get your answers evaluated by an expert evaluation team, submit your answers on the ELEARN platform. Before attempting this particular question, you can also have a reference of the DNS dated 9th November as well as 8th November 2022, whereby Naved sir and Shashank sir has in detail discussed about the issues related to the reservation as well as EWS quota which was recently in news. So go through these DNS, frame your points, structure your answer and come up with the best possible answers which you can. So this is our first topic. This topic has appeared at page number 12 in today's The Hindu Daily edition. And this topic talks about one of the most pressing problems or concerns which today's India faces. And that is the concern of groundwater. The context of this very topic is related to the fact that recent studies of the Central Groundwater Board have concluded that the groundwater extraction in India has seen an 18-year decline. So despite the fact that this context gives us a positive feeling, but we all know that overall the groundwater related issues are becoming the most important issues for our country in today's period. So in today's session, what we are going to discuss? We are going to discuss the concept related to the groundwaters, aquifers, saturated and unsaturated zones. In this line, we will also discuss the potential or the groundwater distribution across various physiographic regions in India. After this, we will discuss the issues associated with India's groundwater and a way ahead strategy which we can adopt as citizens as well as the government officials in order to cope up with this particular issue and to contribute our little bit in order to manage the overall water resources of our country. So in this line, let us begin our discussion in detail. So first of all, we will understand that what exactly do you mean by the groundwater. This diagram shows you the groundwater in different zones. This is the land surface as you can see. So what happens is that there are various sources which contribute to the infiltration of the water. For example, the first and the most important source is precipitation. So whenever there is a rainfall on these ground surfaces or the land surfaces, there is some amount of water which forms as a part of surface flow and certain amount of water gets infiltrated below the land surface. The water which is percolated in downward direction, that is towards the inner portion of this land surface, is known as groundwater. Similarly, the other source are, for example, rivers. So when the rivers flow on these land sources, they also contribute to the percolation of the groundwater in vertically downward direction. So that is how the groundwater reservoir is constructed. Now there are two important zones below this land surface. One is the unsaturated zone and other is the saturated zone. So by now, first I guess that you have understood the concept of groundwater. Groundwater is nothing but just the water which is entrapped within the cracks or the soil particles, the voids which are there in the soil particles below the land surface. For example, here you can see The water which is trapped in the voids which are present between different particles is known as the groundwater. Now, these voids can be filled either with water, or these voids can also be filled by the air. So, in the uppermost portion, that is the portion which is immediately below the land surface, there we have the presence of water as well as air between the voids of different particles. And here, because we are having air as well as water, that means this particular zone is an unsaturated zone. On the contrary, at a further distance below this particular level, there is a saturated zone, which means that all the voids which are there in between different rock particles or the soil particles, all those voids are filled only by water, not by air. So now, because all the space is filled by water, that means that this becomes the saturated zone. Now there is important concept of water table. What is water table? Water table is that imaginary line below the land surface below which we find the saturated zone. Or we can also understand this that an imaginary line which differentiates the unsaturated zone as well as the saturated zone is the water table. The practical relevance of water table is that if you are going deeper from this water table, you are bound to find the groundwater at every place. But if you are digging in this unsaturated zone, there can be certain areas where you will find water, and then there can be certain areas where you might not find water because those areas are filled only by air. So water table is that line beyond which we find the saturated zone, that is all the voids are completely filled only by the water, that is the groundwater. So this is the basic concept of the groundwater. By this concept till now we have understood that the water which percolates down the land surface is the groundwater. So that means that the situations or the conditions or the type or characteristics of this particular land surface will determine the amount of groundwater below this particular land surface. For example, let us say that this particular land is very hard, which is impervious. So that means it will not allow the easy flow of water through it. And that is why the region below this hard rock, impervious rock, will be devoid of the groundwater. On the other hand, if I am taking the particular land surface as porous as well as permeable, so this will allow the fast movement of the water below this land surface, and hence this particular area will be having higher groundwater reservoirs. If you have understood this basic concept, now you can yourself think that which are those areas in India which will be having the maximum reserves of the groundwater, and what are those areas which will be devoid of adequate groundwater reserves. So for this to understand, I have divided the India into 5 major physiographic regions just to understand the availability of the groundwaters in various regions. First, we will discuss the mountains and the steep slope areas. For example, the Western Himalayas, Eastern Himalayas, as well as other hills of Northeast, the Shiva lakes, etc. Now, these areas experience high precipitation. These areas also have abundance of rivers as well as springs. So, we might think that these areas will be having higher groundwater reserves. But the truth is that these areas are deficient in the groundwater potential. Try to think about the reason. The reason is that despite the availability of a lot of water in the form of precipitation, snowfall, rivers, springs, but the mountainous areas are having very steep slopes. So to allow the water to percolate below this land surface, this water above this land surface must have certain time. That means if the water is moving very slowly, then that water is getting adequate time to get infiltrated into this particular region. But if we increase the speed of the water flow, then all the water will be flown over the land surface and it will not get enough time to come down or come below the land surface. This is what exactly happens in the mountainous areas. Because the mountainous areas are having very steep slopes, so what happens is that all the water moves very swiftly across these slopes towards the plain areas, and hence the water percolation becomes very difficult because of the paucity of time. So that is why generally the mountainous or the steep slope areas are deficient as far as the groundwater reserves are concerned. Yes, there can be certain areas in this mountainous topography. For example, there can be certain lakes. For example, the Tan lakes, which are found in the glacial areas. So there can be certain flat topographic regions in this overall steep slope mountainous topography where we can find the groundwater reserves. But overall, these areas are deficient. So next region we are going to discuss is the Ganga Brahmaputra plains. Now all the water which was moving swiftly on this particular slope reduces its speed as soon as it hits the plain, and similar happens in the Ganga Brahmaputra plains. The speed of the water decreases, and further these plains are characterized by thick deposits of alluvial soils. Now an important or the chief characteristics of these alluvial soils are that they are highly porous as well as permeable. The reason being that there are voids between different soil particles. For example, here are three particles and this region is the void. So this allows the easy flow of water from above the land surface to below it. So that is why the Ganga Brahmaputra plains, that is this very region, have excessive groundwater reserves. But the challenge is that these regions are also one of the most agriculturally intensive areas. So this means that in order to meet the irrigation demands, the groundwater extraction in this particular area is also very high. And that is why the steepest increase in the number of critical blocks is found in this particular region. Now, what are these critical blocks or the dead zones? They are those areas from which the groundwater has been extracted beyond a certain limit, which becomes very difficult to get it replenished. These are the critical blocks or the dead zones. Similarly, the coastal and the delta regions also have same characteristics. They also have thick alluvial deposits. They also have slow moving water, that is why the deltas are found, and hence these areas also have high availability of the groundwater reserves. The fourth region which we are going to discuss is the peninsular shield area. For example, the Marathwada region of Maharashtra, similarly the Bundelkhand plateau, similarly certain areas of Deccan. Now in these areas there are two important characteristics. First, this is a hard rock system. Most of the rocks are igneous, which are not permeable, and hence they do not allow the percolation of the water, and that is why this hard rock system becomes one of the important factor that this region has general paucity when it comes to the groundwater reserves. The second reason is that most of this region lies in the rain shadow area. So the southwest monsoon branch which comes and hits the Indian coast, here we have the presence of the Western Ghats. Most of the rainfall gets spread on the windward side of these ghats. And when the wind moves across these mountains, they are generally dry and hence they do not bring the moisture along with them in this particular region. And that is why in these rain shadow areas, because we are not having the water in the form of rain, and hence again we face the general lack of groundwater reserves. Almost similar situation occurs in the arid regions of Rajasthan as well as the Gujarat. And here evaporation rates exceeds the precipitational rates. So first, we do not have perennial rivers in these areas, we do not have precipitational water in these areas, and moreover the water which we have in this particular region, the evaporation of that particular water is way higher as far as the precipitation rates. So the water which we have, it is also being getting evaporated and hence there is no percolation and hence no groundwater. So this is how the physiography of India affects the groundwater distribution across its length and breadth. In this line now we will move towards the issues or the challenges which are associated with India's groundwater. So first and the foremost issue is the uneven distribution of the groundwater. We have already discussed that how unevenly the groundwater reserves are found across India depending upon physiographic as well as climatological conditions. So this is the biggest challenge. The second challenge is the excess extraction of the groundwater. For example, if you look at this particular pie chart, you will notice that around 90% of whole of the groundwater is extracted to meet just the irrigational demands. And that is why in the regions, especially this Ganga Brahmaputra plains where we find intensive agriculture as we have already discussed, there is a challenge of excess extraction of the groundwater. Now, this excess extraction of the groundwater further leads to several challenges. The first challenge is the contamination. When we extract a lot of groundwater, so what happens is that the available water in the bedrock system touches the bare minimum level of that particular rock system. Let us understand this through this particular diagram. Let us imagine that this is a vertical cross section of the rock system. This is the land surface and this is the groundwater. So suppose I am having a tube well and the tube well is extracting the water from this particular depth. A time will come when the tube well will be extracting the water from this particular depth, and subsequently a time will come when this water which the tube well is extracting will be coming from this particular depth. So this bedrock might be made up of different compositions. For example, this rock might be having high concentration of uranium. This rock might be having high concentrations of arsenic or similarly fluoride. So when now this water will be extracting which is touching this bedrock will be having high deposits of this particular material, and hence it will contaminate the groundwater which ultimately will be consumed by the humans as well as animals. That is why this arsenic pollution is one of the most dominant and pressing concern when it comes to the West Bengal region. Here, the groundwater is excessively contaminated by the presence of arsenic. Similarly, in Rajasthan, there is a particular region, you might have heard about it, which in the local language is known as Kubad Patti. This particular region is contaminated by the presence of fluoride, and fluoride leads to skeletal deformities. So because of this skeletal deformities in the local language, that particular region is known as the Kubad Patti. Similarly, the excessive extraction of the groundwater also results into increasing salinity of the water. The logic is again similar. Now we have assumed that this bedrock was dominated by this particular material. It might also happen that this bedrock is dominated by calcareous deposits. So a time will come when the water will be extracted from this bedrock having high presence of calcareous deposits. So again the chances of salinity increases, and further when there is high presence of salinity then it becomes detrimental for the agriculture as a whole. The next important issue related to this is that the recharging of the groundwater aquifers are getting reduced. Now again there are several reasons for it. For example, let us try to associate this particular point with the climate change. How climate change is affecting the groundwater potential. Let us discuss this one point. Now till now we have discussed that there should be certain time gap which will allow the water to percolate the ground surface. If the water is moving very swiftly, then it will not get enough time to come down below the land surface, and hence there will be lack of groundwater reserves. So what climate change is doing, it is increasing the erraticity of the monsoon, that the rainfall extremes have increased to a very huge amount. So now we do not have the gradual precipitation which is spread evenly across the 4 months of monsoon. Rather, what we are having is that intermittent supply of rainfall, that is the intermittent wet and dry periods. So when this intermittency increases, that is the rainfall extreme events increases, this means that the velocity of the water which is coming with this high intensity precipitation will be very high, and this will reduce the time to allow the water to percolate, and hence the climate change is affecting that time duration gap, which was very useful earlier in order to increase the groundwater. Similarly, the other reasons are, for example, increase in urbanization and industrialization has led to increase of concretization. Now, earlier, this whole land was a raw land. Let's say there were trees, there were grasses, there were certain shrubs. So, but this was a bare land, and hence the water was getting infiltrated across this particular land surface. But now I have covered this whole land with a mass of concrete. So whatever precipitation will be there on this particular area, it will just move as a surface runoff because concrete or bitumen will not allow the water to infiltrate beyond this level. So these are the certain reasons which are reducing the groundwater recharge capacity. The last but not the least reason is the poor governance. So there is a general lack of effective policies, schemes as well as legislative measures which in long run have proven as detrimental for the groundwater reserves. For example, we have the Easement Act. This act provides the right to the landholder over the water resources below his land. Next, we do not have any law or any policy which will make mandatory for the people if they want to dug a tube well in their land. So suppose tomorrow if I am willing to dug a tube well or a boring in my agricultural land, I am free to do that. So combination of these things have resulted into indiscriminate rise of the tube wells across the agricultural fields. Certain state governments have also subsidized the electricity. It was done basically to increase their agriculture, but on the contrary side, what it has led to is now because I don't have to pay the electricity bill, so I can use as much electricity as I want in order to extract the water to irrigate my farm field. So again, it is leading to excessive extraction of the groundwater. So these are various issues which have led to the detrimental position of the groundwater reservoirs in India. But now, as an administrator, you must know that what are the steps which you will be taking when there will be responsibility on your shoulders. And in this very regard, now we will discuss that what can be a way ahead, what to do, what strategy to adopt. So first of all, the policy measures which are to be taken, those policy measures must focus on the integrated approach. Now what do I mean by integrated approach? Integrated approach is that one of the major challenge that we are not able to conserve or manage our groundwater resources is that we work for the conservation of the groundwater in silos. We do not integrate all the water resources into a one compact box. For example, we have groundwater. We also have surface water in the form of rivers. We also have glacial melt water. We also have presence of water in our atmosphere, which is known as atmospheric water. So if you basically understand the basics of hydrological cycle, you will come to know that all these various types of water are interrelated to each other. If there is a challenge in any one type of water, it will detrimentally affect the other type as well. So that means if you have to manage or conserve any one type of water resource, you must focus on the other water resources as well. The second is the agro irrigation reforms. Now, as we have already discussed that around 90% of the groundwater is extracted for the agriculture or irrigation purposes. Hence, we must focus on the micro irrigation strategies, as well as we must change our cropping pattern in order to adopt agroclimatic crops across India. The next strategy must be the revival strategy. We must revive the traditional water harvesting systems. For example, johars, khadirs, bawdis, ponds, etc. Similarly, the aquifer recharge must also be done, and the paleo channels must also be revived. Now, what do you mean by paleo channels? For example, you might have heard about the Saraswati river. Now we all know that the channel through which that river was once upon a time flowing is now dried up. Similar is the case with the Ghaggar Hakra Basin. So these are the paleo channels. Paleo channels are basically the remnants of the once flowing rivers. So let us assume that these rivers were flowing over this particular land surface. Now, because these are paleo channels, so all the water which was available in this channel has been dried up. But the studies suggest that below this ground surface, there are evidences that the water might be present in the pores of the soils of the rocks which are there here. So, if we are able to revive these paleo channels, we will not only conserve or increase our groundwater reserves, we will also increase the potential of our surface waters. The next strategy must be focused towards the grassroots steps which should be taken at the panchayat and municipality level. So here the women participation becomes very important. For example, you might have heard about Rajendra Singh. So Rajendra Singh is also known as the waterman of India. So the steps which he or his organization has taken, we can replicate that particular model in different regions of India. Next comes the technological measures. Nowadays is the age of artificial intelligence, sensors, etc. So the government can rope in these particular technologies in order to have an eye over the present groundwater resources. This will help the government to collect the data. This will help the citizens to analyze the available groundwater below their agricultural field, and this will also in a long run will help to make a dedicated framework which can be utilized to conserve the groundwaters in India. And the last step is that we must focus on efficient implementation of various government strategies or policies which are already existing in this regard. For example, Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana focuses on micro irrigation because it talks about per drop more crop, हर खेत को पानी, etc. Similarly, Atal Bhujal Mission focuses on developing the grassroots initiatives in different villages across India in order to revive the groundwater aquifers and manage the groundwater resources. Similarly, the scheme Kusum, which is aimed at conserving the energy and subsidizes the solar pumps, in turn reduces the energy demand, which indirectly will also affect the demand of the water resources and hence the groundwater too. So these are various strategies which you people can use in your mains answer as well as to brainstorm to come up with further new strategies in this regard. So that's all for this topic. This was a lengthy topic and hence we will revise this topic in brief once again. So initially we talked about the concept of the groundwater, saturated zone and unsaturated zone. Here we understood that how the groundwater is actually formed, what is the basics of the water table, and what are those physiographic or geological conditions which affect the availability of the groundwater below a certain land surface. In this very line, we discuss the groundwater distribution assessment across India on the basis of physiographic, geological, as well as climatological conditions. Here we found that the deltaic areas as well as the Ganga Brahmaputra plains, because of the presence of higher surface water as well as the presence of alluvial sands, are the most rich areas when it comes to the groundwater. On the contrary, the peninsular shield as well as the arid regions of Rajasthan and Gujarat face a huge paucity of the groundwater. In this line, we discuss the various issues which are associated with India's groundwater, which were in terms of uneven distribution, excessive extraction, high contamination, increasing salinity, reduced recharge, and poor governance. In order to deal with these challenges, in the last we discussed about this strategy in terms of integrated approach, agro-irrigational reforms, revival of traditional water harvesting systems, aquifers as well as paleo channels, taking grassroots initiatives which some of the model steps which are taken by various people across India, roping in the technological solutions and implementing effectively various government policies in this regard. This topic has appeared at page number 6 in today's The Hindu Daily edition. The topic reads policing with the talent, resource sharing, and not squabbling. The context of this very topic is the increasing friction between center and the states in the context of management over the police. This friction is more predominant between the center and those states which are being ruled by the opposition parties. Some of the recent examples in this very regard is withdrawal of the general consent of the CBI by the West Bengal government. So that is why it becomes important for us to understand the associated and closely linked dimensions with the core theme presented in this very article. So for this to understand, first we need to know that as per the Schedule 7 of our Indian Constitution, what is the power distribution between the center and the states. Now when we look at the state list, entry 1 deals with the public order. So that means that the responsibility to maintain the law and order for the public welfare lies with the shoulders of the state government. The entry 2 explicitly mentions the power of the states over the police, including the railways as well as village police. However, this particular entry is subject to the entry 2A of the union list. So the question arises that what is the entry 2A of the union list? This basically deals with the power of the central government for the deployment of any armed forces. These armed forces can be from the defense, for example, Army, Navy, or Air Force, or it can be the paramilitary forces, for example, Assam Rifles, Indian Coast Guards, or it can be the Central Armed Police Forces, for example, CRPF, BSF, ITBP, etc. So the deployment of these forces lies within the mandate of the central government. This means that to ensure the public order, it is not the exclusive jurisdiction of the state. It can be supported by the center as well. But nowadays, as the context is saying that there has been increase in the friction between center and states over the functioning of the police. And this brings us to a very important dimension within the broader context of the police reforms. And that dimension is the independence of the police. And this independence must be from the political control. Because let us understand this particular thing in this context that let's say there is a specific state A which is opposing the center, and this particular state is being ruled by the opposition party which is there in the center. So now because the police of this very state is also under the control of the state government, and the state political machinery is so dominant to control this police that the police itself will not be able to take any action despite the fact that those actions can be for the broader welfare of the society or the country or the state. So in order to settle the political scores, in order to gain certain political mileage, these state governments exercise enough control over the state police. And that is why in the Prakash Singh case in Supreme Court, the court laid down clearly that the steps must be taken in order to ensure the independence of the police from the political machinery. So in this very regard, let us discuss some of the key recommendations of the various committees which are constituted, as well as the important directives which were given by the Supreme Court in Prakash Singh judgment case. So primarily there are 4 committees which deal with these things. First was the Gore Committee. This was basically on the police training, and it recommended that the content of the police training must be increased from law and order, and it should further include the sensitivity and understanding of the human behavior. So that means that this particular committee aimed to bring the sociological training within the police services. The National Police Commission in 1977 recommended that the police must be insulated from the illegitimate political and bureaucratic interference. Now just see that in 1977 it was been recommended, and today we are discussing this topic in 2022. So many decades have been passed, but the reality remains the same, that the state police are still under the control of State Politics and Bureaucracy. Padmanabhaiya Committee in 2000 recommended that the constables, police force in general should receive greater training in soft skills such as communication, counseling and leadership given the need to deal with the public regularly. And then the Police Act Drafting Committee drafted a new Model Police Act to replace the colonial 1861 Police Act. So these were certain recommendations, but the more important thing is the directives which were binding in nature given by the Supreme Court to all the states. There were 7 directives given. Let us closely understand these directives. The Supreme Court said that a state security commission must be constituted in each state. This State Security Commission will be responsible and it will act as a watchdog body to oversee the functioning of the police, and all the recommendations which this State Security Commission will come up will be binding on the state government. So the State Security Commission is a overall body to oversee the functioning of the police in the state. The next recommendation was in regard of the appointment and service conditions of the Director General of Police in each state. It said that the selection of the DGP should be from the panel as prepared by the Union Public Service Commission. This was done in order to enhance the independence of this highest state policing authority from the state political machinery. The guideline further said that a minimum tenure of 2 years should be there for the DGP, so that the position of the GDP can come out from the clutches, from the whims and fancies of the state government. Similarly, a minimum 2-year tenure must be there for other police officers except under the specified circumstances. In order to increase the efficiency, the court said that the investigation must be separated from the law and order functions of the state government. But still, there should be an effective and full coordination between both the arms of the police, that is, investigation as well as law and order. Further, the fifth point was that the state must create a police establishment boards, and this board will be responsible for transfers, postings and other service related matters of police officers. And obviously this was done to protect the police from the illegal or irregular orders. The sixth directive was in relation to the constitution of the Police Complaints Authority at the state and district level in order to enhance the accountability of the police towards the citizens. Further, at the national level, the court said that there should be a constitution of the National Security Commission. And this commission was tasked to prepare the panels for the selection of chiefs of the central police organizations. For example, as we have already discussed, like BSF, CRPF, ITBP, CISF, SSB, etc. And this commission will be responsible to provide the measures to upgrade and increase the effectiveness of these organizations. Post this Prakash Singh judgment in 2006, after 2 years in 2008, there was a 3-member K.T. Thomas committee constituted by the Supreme Court. This committee was tasked to monitor the steps which are taken in this regard. And as we all know, it submitted its finding in 2010, that is 4 years after this particular case, and said that no state fully complied with the Supreme Court and expressed the dismay over the total indifference of police towards reforming in its functioning. So now, when we see today's article and when we see that there has been increase in friction between the central and state machineries on this police, the core question which comes to our mind is that why the situation has become such. So one of those reasons is the high political control over the police machinery. So that is why we discussed today's article in the context of the Prakash Singh judgment guidelines given by Supreme Court in order to ensure the independence and separate it from the clutches of the state political machineries. This topic has appeared at page number 12. The topic reads, Pashmina shawls have Shehtush guard hair. The context of this very topic is that recently, due to the presence of Shehtush guard hair in many export consignments of Pashmina shawls, various issues have been flagged by the customs authorities. So, as you can see, this topic has two important keywords. One is the Shehtush and other is the Pashmina shawls. Hence, this topic becomes important for us people from the prelims perspective. So that is why in today's session we are going to learn certain key facts related to the Pashmina shawls and Pashmina goats, as well as another important wildlife species, that is Tibetan antelope, in the context of Shehtush. So first we will look at that what is Pashmina. Now Pashmina as a word is the art of handcrafting luxury apparel and accessories. So Pashmina is something related to the textiles. But this apparel is made from the downy undercoat of the Himalayan goat. These Himalayan goats are also known as Changthangi goats. These Changthangi goats are also known as Changpa goats. Now, Changpa, this particular name is derived from the nomadic tribes, that is Changpas, of the Changtang Plateau. So, these goats are found in the high plateaus of the Ladakh in the northern India. It may also be known as Ladakh Pashmina or the Kashmiri Pashmina. So as we all know that the intense cold conditions in the Ladakh region of India causes the goats to grow a thick undercoat which is harvested to produce the fine Pashmina grade of Kashmiri. So the key words are Pashmina is a form of textiles being extracted from the Himalayan goats or the Changtangi goats or the Changpa goats. Now, in the context of Shehtush, we should learn about the Tibetan antelope. So, this is the picture of Tibetan antelope. As far as the IUCN status is concerned, this is a nearly threatened species. It is native to the northeastern Tibetan plateau, and most of the population live within the Chinese border, while some are scattered across India as well as Bhutan. Further, they are also hunted for their extremely soft, light, and warm underfur, which is usually obtained after death. And this underfur is basically known as shehtush. Shehtush is a Persian word meaning king of fine wools. Again, this material is also used to weave luxury shawls. Now, coming to this last topic, which again has appeared at page number 12. The topic is in the context that recently the Solicitor General Tushar Mehta will lead the official Indian delegation to the Human Rights Council, that is UNHRC, United Nations Human Rights Council, where the fourth Universal Periodic Review will take place. So, in this very regard, again, from the prelims perspective, we need to be aware about certain key facts related to this particular organization, that is United Nations Human Rights Commission. First of all, it is an intergovernmental body. So now, because this is an intergovernmental body, which simply means that the members of this particular body are the sovereign countries, sovereign states. For example, India. This body was established by the United Nations General Assembly on 15th March 2006, and this body has replaced the former United Nations Commissions on Human Rights. As far as its seat is concerned, the headquarters of UNHRC is located in Geneva, Switzerland. And now, as the name is suggesting to us, the main function or the mandate of the Council is to promote the universal respect for the protection of all the human rights and fundamental freedom for all, and also to address the situations of violations of these human rights, and in this regard making the recommendations. Coming to the membership structure of this body, this council is made up of around 47 member states. These member states are elected, again an important point, and this election is done by the majority of the members of the General Assembly itself. The voting is direct as well as it is done through the secret ballot. So 47 member states which are elected by the majority of the votes of General Assembly. The voting is direct and done through secret ballot. The council's membership is based on equitable geographical distribution. That means the seats are allocated to different regions depending upon various parameters like population sizes, etc. And that is why most of the seats are allocated to the African region as well as Asia Pacific region. Each of these regions commands 13 seats. Then comes the Latin American and Caribbean states commanding 8 seats, Western European and other states commanding 7 seats, Eastern European commands 6 seats. As far as the tenure is concerned, so the members of the council serve period for 3 years and are not eligible for immediate re-election after serving 2 consecutive terms. So that means that if the terms are not consecutive, then member can be elected as many times and there is no bar on it. But if 2 consecutive terms are there, then it is not eligible for immediate re-election. That means again, after a particular period, it can be re-elected, but not immediately. India is re-elected to the UNHRC for the 6th term for the period 2022 to 2024. And India has vowed to continue to work for the promotion and protection of the human rights through Samman, Samvad and Sahyog. The 3 key words which India has postulated at this particular platform. So that is all for today. All the very best and study hard.